Okay.
Oh, the landfill has the Frederick County landfill. Yeah, I imagine so, yeah. Because they got to haul them away too.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you. Alrighty. Thank you.
Mr.
Coming.
Sam, you okay?
Mr. Sweeney?
I was,
Sorry, go ahead.
Sam?
Is there anyone? What's the matter?
no, I was just going to ask a question, if it's okay, just real quick. And I don't know if this is the time or place to do it. I know we just passed this ordinance, and I know what's in the past is in the past. However, any fees that were charged to Bollinger Construction, I was just curious to see if we could look to see if they could be returned to the business, as they do a lot for our community. And yes, the ordinance was written the way it was, but I think going forward, just in the spirit of community, just something I'm throwing out there. I don't know if we need to make a motion to do that, or if that's something we need to investigate.
Can I answer your question?
Sure.
Address your question. So they were cited for the setbacks, for building a structure without a permit, as well as the sea containers. We did not pursue any fines related to the sea containers themselves, or the trailers themselves. The only fines we pursued were related to the building structure and the setbacks. They weren't related to the trailers. So they were what brought our attention to it is they were using the sea containers as a building, part of a building structure. So there are three. We didn't pursue the fines for that we.
We did not pursue them. We for the courts.
Yeah, we didn't pursue those through the courts.
You did receive a citation from the town, but you did not receive a follow up from the courts. Sorry, I have to.
So they paid their fees.
They paid the fine on their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So hold on. Hold on. Direct it to staff. Direct it to the board, and then we will look into that. Certainly, Commissioner Ritz. My understanding is the fines that were enforced were for the setbacks and for the building structure,
Okay.
and we made the determination to not pursue the fines for the trailers themselves because of this. If they did go ahead and pay the fines for the trailers, we can go back and look into that, and then if the board wants us to, we can certainly reimburse them for the fines for the trailers.
If you could look into that, I would, thank
Right.
you, thank you. Okay, that's all.
Sure.
You got it?
Okay. Anybody else have anything on the trailers?
Not
We
related to
go on
this,
to the next one.
deputy?
Yes,
Okay. You okay?
deputy.
You okay?
Do you have your police report you want to give since you're here now?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
Was I out of line doing that?
It's over here. Thank you. See that?
I apologize for being late.
I'm sure you had a good reason.
That's nice. Walk out and clear it.
Happy hour.
Thanks
You
for
were at
coming.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, you see, I told you. We'll get this.
That's nice. I can clear a room. All right. Again, I'm sorry for my tardiness. I had a call that took me back down to Frederick. So, the October 2018 monthly law enforcement report, we had 2 noise complaints, 5 suspicious activities, 1 assault, 2 times where we assisted other police agencies, handled 3 thefts, 1 juvenile complaint, 9 alarms, 3 times we assisted the fire department on calls, 1 destruction of property, 7 disorderly conducts, 1 trespass, and 31 911 hangups. The proactive enforcement, we had 4 talks cards, 8 walking patrols, 53 patrol checks. In the traffic stats, we had 58 stops total between Deputy Whitehouse and I. 34 citations were issued, 45 warnings, 1 SERO, equipment repair order, and we handled 1 traffic complaint. We opened up 7 selective enforcements and 10 collisions. The arrest for the month, we had 1 traffic arrest. And the special note or calls for service, special notes, is we had some signs that were stolen. They were the town of Emmitsburg reserved parking signs in the antique mall. I was fortunate enough to have the Mount St. Mary's assistance in that, and we located the individuals. They returned the signs, and no damage was done to the signs, and they were. And the Mount has informed me that there will be consequences, and I will follow up with that as well. Special assignments. Deputy Whitehouse worked on the day of the Fallen Firefighters Memorial. So he was out at the Vigilant Hose Company, and one of the firefighters graciously put on the McGruff suit. So Deputy Whitehouse didn't have to do it. The Halloween parade and the festivities, I think it was a fun time. No incidences there. I think there was lots of candy distributed. So hopefully they do regular checkups at the dentist. They're probably going to need it. Of course, the town meeting, and helped clear the main street for the line painting. And let's see. I want to address the additional information, the speed complaints on the west end of town. I know the town received numerous emails about that. There's been some upset residents.
What is it again?
The speed complaints on the west end of town. I think it was for the larger trucks. Deputy Whitehouse and I, on different occasions, have gone out there and did speed enforcement. And so I was thinking about this today, as I knew I was going to be talking about the monthly report. So I want people to understand that when you have a large vehicle moving down the roadway, it may appear that they are going faster than the posted speed limit. The posted speed limit is 25. And so I never, and all the time I was out there, I did not have a large commercial truck. I'm not going to put a business out there or anything, but there is one company that travels the road all night long. It's what they do. The fastest I ever got one of their vehicles going through the west end of town was 30 miles an hour. Now, I personally have a hard time stopping that vehicle going 30 and a 25, because if I start doing that, then I'm also going to start stopping passenger vehicles going 30 and a 25. And I really don't think that's the way we need to do it. So, in essence, Deputy Whitehouse and I talked about this, and like I said, we have one company. So we're going to reach out to that company and see what we can do on that end. Okay, I know, again, there was a couple residents that says it shook the plaster off their walls and things like that. So we'll see if we can't resolve that problem by that way. So another thing I want to note is phone scams. It seems like there's a couple new ones going around. If you get a phone call and you believe it's a scam, call us. We can document it in case it needs. We need further investigation. But definitely call us. We are coming upon the Christmas season. I hate to say that before we ever get to Thanksgiving, because the retail store is already at Easter.
It's on fire tonight.
But you have to be aware of UPS if you're getting stuff from Amazon and FedEx. If you are getting packages sent to your house, make sure you have a plan to pick them up if you're not going to be home, a trusty neighbor of some sort. Deputy Whitehouse didn't put this on here, but I want to let people know also that you need to lock your cars at night. At 9 o'clock, lock your cars. Or when you get out of your car, lock your cars. Close your garage doors. And we had some graffiti on the bridge. I know the mayor was constantly calling Mr. Click when it removed fast. I understand that, sir. I contacted SHA the moment I found it. It has been removed. If anybody has any information regarding that, it is an ongoing investigation. I'd love to find out who did it and make them pay restitution and file criminal charges. But any help we can get on that, I'd greatly appreciate it. Questions?
So we had a group of people going through offering free floor cleaning. They hit almost every neighborhood. I think you guys handled that also.
Yeah, I wasn't working. I did definitely got your message, but I wasn't working. I don't know if Deputy Whitehouse was working that day, but yes, it was.
I
it
heard
was
that they
addressed.
were pulled over and talked to.
Yeah, we also had another one. I think it was earlier in the month. The magic liquid in a bottle that takes everything off. And to be honest with you, I'm not advertising for them. They actually took some residue off the side of my car that I could never get off with a soapy water, and so I was quite impressed. I didn't have the money to buy it. But
those people need to have a permit.
And that is correct. So every time if we do come across those individuals, we always direct them to the town office to get a permit. But yes, yeah, yeah.
And then also a lot of people are concerned because at the square, at the light, when someone's making a turn, people are going off and passing, creating sometimes a dangerous situation for pedestrians.
In all directions, like on Main Street or coming off North and South
The
Seaton.
people that are complaining are talking about Main Street. If someone has to stop at that light to make a turn left, for example, people are going around.
Okay, so let's just make an example here. So someone's on West Main Street and they're going to make a left-hand turn on North Seaton.
Right.
And the other person either wants to go straight on East Main Street or make a right-hand turn on South Seaton. Correct? Okay. So they're passing on the right-hand side when, okay,
Right.
gotcha.
So that's also been a problem. And I also heard that you're very close with McGruff. And December 3rd is our Christmas celebration. If you can ask him to come, that would be great.
The tree
Yes,
lighting.
the tree light.
On December 3rd. I will see what I can do.
Thank you very much.
Or his brother.
Or his brother. Okay.
Yes.
All right,
He was there
McGriff.
last
Gotcha.
holiday.
He was. He
And he
even
was
rode
okay.
on. He even rode on the fire truck with
That was
Santa
amazing.
Claus. I got you. Yeah.
Commissioner
I'll see what I can do.
Mr. Blanchard has a question.
Just real quick, Sunday's Veterans Day.
Thank you.
Town is already notifying people basically about the firing of the blanks. We're working around the church services. If anyone has any questions about that, obviously concerns of what happened 2 weeks ago in Pittsburgh, we are starting outside of town. If anyone has any concerns, they address it with you. We're going to start on the other side of 15. They go into Mount St. Mary's. We're doing a reverse order of basically where the firing with the blanks are.
Okay.
So just to let everyone know, obviously we are a consideration of the church services on the Sunday and heightened concerns and firing of weapons in the middle of town. It is blanks, but it is the honor guard, and we're starting outside town and coming back in. So if anyone asks you any questions,
Okay.
we're trying to work around, obviously a very sensitive issue right now. So
Okay. And where is the ceremony? Like
we're
where?
going to start actually on the other side of 15. There's one cemetery that's just south of the Pennsylvania state line.
Okay.
Above
It's on Weldy Road.
Welty Road.
Okay, I got that. But where are you firing off the rounds at?
Well, the rounds are going to start there.
Okay.
Then we're going to go to Mount St. Mary's. Then immediately we're going to go outside town to the one that's next to Brookfield.
St. Joe's. maybe.
And then St. Joseph Cemetery that's in town, but it's the one that's off of Seton Avenue.
Cross Street.
And then we'll probably be about noon by the time we're actually in town, firing at the Doughboy and at the cemetery behind St. Joseph's.
Okay.
Lutheran Church.
Sir, is there any way like you can send me an email of like the locations and approximate times?
Okay.
So and the reason I'm doing it because I'm not working Sunday.
Okay.
But I believe Deputy Whitehouse is.
Okay.
And I can also that way I can share with the
I can
patrol
try to do
areas.
this tomorrow. We can just
Yeah.
just everybody concerns basically
Absolutely.
when they hear this on a Sunday. It's like this is what's happening.
Absolutely.
It just it's Veterans Day and it's
Yep.
going on Sunday this year. So
I totally understand.
Commissioner O'Donnell, do you have a
Yes,
question?
Deputy, just a question. There's a reference to a heroin overdose, repeated location. The individual is revived with Narcan, maybe?
Yes.
Or, very good, okay. Same question I asked you a while back. Counseling services provided, direction, like,
Yeah, so
Follow up.
that individual end up going to the hospital, and all that information was given to that individual there.
okay,
It's at that point they have to,
correct.
Opportunity
was provided. That's what I'm looking
Yes.
for. Unfortunately,
every time.
it is what it is. Okay.
Commissioner Ritz, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
I just want to thank you guys for helping with the Halloween, the parade and everything. And
Not a
everything
problem.
went really smoothly except for the graffiti on the bridge. I imagine that happened the same night because it was there the next day when I went by.
It was not there at 9:00 when I drove through there.
No,
so
I
it
seen
happened.
next morning also.
Yeah. So my understanding, it happened somewhere between 9 in the evening till 5:00 in the morning. This was the first time someone told me they saw it.
Where was McGruff?
Not sure. I'll have to ask him. I have a question for you since you brought up the Halloween parade.
Yes.
Someone said that the escort of the parade was a little fast. Well, how did you feel about that?
I didn't think it went too fast because you guys will go all the way down to Paul's Pit Stop and come up School Lane, correct? I don't think it went too fast
Okay.
because the kids didn't all come at one time. They were
Well, yeah,
separated.
it's always.
Well, I was hoping you'd say it was too fast, because then you could fire me from that duty, and I could give it back to
Oh, no,
Deputy
no, no.
Whitehouse.
We would like to promote you.
It's I think it went really well. Everything went really
Yeah,
well
it
that
did.
night.
It was
It
perfect.
it did, Wes.
A nice night. It was hot out, not cold, and no rain. And
Yeah. So,
thanks for helping.
all right. Anything else?
I'm good.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Alrighty, what else we got now? The way signs. What's the next on the agenda?
Okay. If I may introduce them, Commissioner.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Just a little background, we were secured a grant to do some way signs, and we felt we'd start at the square and drag people across so they see part of our beautiful town to other historic sites. And as a part of that, the Heart of the Civil War Trust has had these wonderful people work with putting this together. The town had several meetings with them, and we were gave special sensitive attention to the Doughboy, how this way sign up there would be. A lot of accommodations were made as to what view we'd have with regard to ADA compliance and also the flow of traffic. But I'm going to stop here. We have Scott Grove of Grove Publications, LLC, and Ruth Bielopke.
Bilibaki.
Bill, okay, thank you, of Ion Design Firm to make a presentation to you tonight. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. Since about the year 2000, I've had the honor of traveling across the United States developing wayside exhibits for the National Park Service. I've also worked for state and local tourism and heritage areas. Scott Grove has been the writer and researcher on your project. Together, we've partnered on various projects for over 20 years. So I thought I would start the presentation to give you just a little bit of a background on wayside exhibits. The term wayside exhibit actually was developed by the National Park Service. And as you can see, it includes photos, diagrams, sometimes custom illustration, and the purpose is to interpret the resource in front of you. It's a great tool for interpretation, and it's basically acts as a substitute if you don't have a ranger or a docent or a volunteer. This gives your visitors the interpretation they need on site. So I think it's really sort of an amazing transformation that can happen. Take, for example, the Catoctin Aqueduct that you see here. A visitor can be hiking or biking the C&O Canal, and they may or may not stop and look. But when you add interpretation, all of a sudden, visitors know that there's something they should stop and look at. As a result, they learn about the resource, and they gain a greater appreciation of the site. They may even tell or show others or come back. So it can be a very powerful tool for any town, park, city, or heritage area. When you do this in your town, all of a sudden people see the significance, and it's a great way to instill pride, educate the public, and it can become a tool for tourism development. So the process that we use, first we start with a site visit. Afterwards, we present sketches and a formal proposal. And it just kind of gives you a little bit of background on and how we work. So we thought what we would do is put each exhibit on the screen. Scott can go over the purpose statement for each exhibit. I take it you've all had some time to read. If you haven't, if you need time, please do, and we can answer any questions that you may have.
Well, on the town square, wayside, our purpose statement, and the purpose statement is a general statement that kind of provides an overview as to what the focus and goal of it should be. Well, our goal was to provide a basic overview and orientation of Frederick's founding and development. We wanted to show Emmitsburg's town square that it was, continues to be a nexus of commercial, transportation, and historical activity. And so we communicated those things in the text. We found a really wonderful photo. We worked very closely with Lisa Elder at the Chronicle, who's been tremendously helpful. And our text talks about William Emmett, who laid out the town based on basically on the east-west road that was in place already, and the fact that until Route 15 was in place, traffic traveling from Washington D.C. up toward up north came through town, and we used we wanted to focus on the fountain a little bit, and also to the area as a crossroads, and we featured. This is a photograph from 1922. There was a recreation of Pickett's Charge up in Gettysburg, and the U.S. Marines, which were still a new branch of the military back at that time, traveled from the White House up through Frederick County, through Emmitsburg, and they did this major recreation, and actually the president was there. One thing that sort of guided us, and my understanding is that the funding that was obtained from the Maryland Heritage, that we were to emphasize Civil War whenever possible. And so the Civil War theme naturally popped up as a result of this. Are there questions or?
Yes, Commissioner Bradshaw.
Okay, all right. Just a factual point, actually. I was looking through some of the documents. I'm not sure you details. With America Goes to War, Doughboy Francis Elder, there's a remark at the end where it says he was killed Oregon Forest, which is correct, but buried. He was only buried temporarily in France. They actually exhumed his grave and brought his body back. His body's buried behind St. Joseph's Church in Emmitsburg, where there's a gravestone of Francis Elder. He's the namesake of the local American Legion Post.
Okay.
So the
Great.
book on the remains of Company D, many of these soldiers were buried just temporarily in France, and then
Yes.
their bodies were brought back. So I'm not sure how we could change that, because I could see locals saying, wait a minute, I just went to his gravestone behind the church. And I know his family, the elders, actually identified his remains when it came back to Emmitsburg.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah,
And
thank
I'm
you
so
for
glad
telling us.
thank you for bringing that forward.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's just one point I just wanted to bring up.
I mean, according to what we read, I think he was buried temporarily then.
Many of the soldiers were buried because they moved so fast through the Oregon Forest. They had no choice. They didn't want the bodies to decompose, so they buried them temporarily, and then they came back afterwards using the dog tags to identify the remains, and then shipped them back to the United States, as many as they could.
Yeah.
So
Thank
said
you.
he was buried at St. Joseph's?
St. Joseph Cemetery in Emmitsburg, Maryland, which is right up the road. And his gravestone, the original gravestone is actually in front of the Legion Post, and they redid his gravestone just about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I saw that and I went, his family might see that and go, wait a minute, I know he's buried behind the church.
Lisa did see this, so
Huh.
yeah. But
Okay.
you know what? Maybe she didn't. Maybe she was.
She might
unaware.
she might have been aware of it. So, anyways, that's just one point I want to make. Mr. O'Donnell, I know you got probably some.
Go for it.
I'll
Yeah,
let
go
you
for
do
it.
that one.
No, go ahead.
Should we move on to the next? Should we?
Oh,
We're
okay.
projecting
Sorry.
them on the
Move on to the
screen.
next.
Well, are we, Mr. Sweeney, how are you managing
Mr.
the
O'Donnell, do
feedback?
you have any comments on this picture? Anybody have any comments on this?
Well, I was just,
photograph?
I don't know
Square? No.
if we feel it's important or not, but there's always this big controversy in town as to what happened to the fountain. It was melted down for the war effort, I believe is the truth on what actually happened. And I don't know if that could be added or if we're interested in adding it so that we can like dispel that it's in front of the library.
Which war?
A piece of it is in front of the library, or is in front of this building.
There's debate whether or not that's actually part of the fountain or it's something else altogether. So,
And then I think another piece is in
See, we're
Frederick.
not all not sure what happened to this fountain.
yeah.
Well, and sometimes we just, unless you're sure, it's.
Right, I thought it was dispelled that it
I'm sure
wasn't
Helmut
that
would
piece
love to
in
get
front
into
of
it,
the
but I think we
library.
can understand it. So.
Yeah.
There is a piece of it, I believe, out in front of this building. I'm pretty sure.
There's just debate whether or not it's actually a piece of the fountain or not.
Yeah, it's a big
debated.
debate.
Yeah.
All right, well, never mind.
Okay.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Civil War tourism through town, and details are everything. So, for example, we've got Jeb Stuart, If it's Jeb, then we go J, capital E, capital B, dot, 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 periods for abbreviation.
Move on to the next slide.
Well, actually, this is this one, I
Oh, it is,
believe,
okay.
in the lower right-hand corner.
Yes.
The other item there is,
It should be capital.
it should be JEB, but with periods because it's three names, and the Civil War folks will, tear that one up. The other piece is the mounted soldiers, horse-mounted soldiers are cavalry, not Calvary. Calvary is where Christ was crucified in the Christian
sorry,
tradition.
typo.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Another one would be
I didn't even see that.
the Marines who marched through town were going to a reenactment of the Battle of Gettysburg and to participate in the event Pickett's Charge. Pickett's Charge is listed here as the battle. You have it the way it's phrased here. From Washington D.C. to Gettysburg to participate in the reenactment of the Civil War battle Pickett's Charge, and that's not that doesn't align.
Okay.
What we were trying to,
Sure.
help us with that. I mean, thank you for bringing that up. What we were trying to do was communicate the fact that some people wouldn't know what Pickett's Charge was.
Sure.
So,
The bigger event is Gettysburg, though. That's the attention to participate in Pickett's Charge. That's also an important fact. I mean, that the Marines were there for that specific event, but you don't have one without the other.
okay.
I mean, like it's
Okay.
thematically Gettysburg event.
Biggest charge at the Battle of
Subcontent Pickett's
Gettysburg.
Charge.
Okay.
Um, the other piece, just my concern relates to some of the prose in that it's very verbose. You have many run-on sentences, and I don't know if that's an interpretive sign trademark. I find it everywhere, but oftentimes we're not always dealing with, again, the historians and those who are the great readers, but those who just need shorter sentences and a little bit more texture and diversity in what they read. And when you have these run-on sentences, the meaning gets lost. I mean, that's kind of my take on it. And this is after a day of grading essays ad nauseum. So shorter sentences are more effective and clearer. I would go with that, and I could give you suggestions, later. And just grammatically, I don't know if we're trying to save money on punctuation, but like every time I see US, it's us versus U period S period, or DC, D period, C period.
It's National Park Service standards.
All right, well, I'm not a colloquialist. So that's where I am on these.
Yeah, okay,
So,
thank you.
But shortening it up would be wonderful in places.
Anybody else?
For the town square one specifically?
That's where we are, yeah.
Okay, no, I have nothing else on that.
Commissioner Buckman? Commissioner
I'm good on this one.
I'm fine too. Go ahead to the next one.
How does this work?
There you go.
And that's the one I already pointed out, the thing about Elder at the bottom.
Yes, and thank you. Thank you for doing
No
that.
problem.
Over on the left-hand side, the 6 young men, we have 3 in the front, there are 3 in the back. I know for a fact that Louis Stoner is spelled Louis, not Lewis.
Okay.
That's actually Louis Stoner Sr. His son, Junior, lived in the house across from where I grew up on West Main Street.
Okay.
And Louis' name was Louis.
Okay,
And I think
great.
in the on the historical the 100 years ago in this place, it's on the website. I know it's spelled with the French spelling, Louis.
Okay.
So instead of Louis,
But
it's
he's Lewis.
no, it's Louis.
Yes, okay,
Louis, yes.
all right.
And I'm not so sure about Owen J. Adelsberger. I don't know if that was really his first name. I thought it was just Joseph, unless he just went by his middle name. That I'm not sure on.
I was going by names that had been recorded, Tell me again that, give me that one again, please.
It's actually the last. It's the gentleman in the second row. So the last individual, Owen J. Adelsberger.
What do you think?
I'm not sure if Owen is his first name.
Okay. Let me check that.
Okay.
I'm thinking that's what's on the Doughboy.
Okay.
We found a couple of,
Again, maybe he went by his
Yeah.
middle name,
yeah.
you know.
Mr. Blanchard?
No, just that one comment about the elder. That's all I got.
Mr. Blanchard, I loved what you wrote in your interpretation related to colored soldiers.
Okay.
I'd really prefer that to what I see here, and
Yeah,
that
look, see if I got that saved someplace.
it addresses the notion of, you know, the two sides of the controversy. Was this exclusion or inclusion
Yeah.
based on the fact they had the option to not list colored soldiers at all? That's kind of where I'm coming from. I really thought yours was well thought out, and it was
They
beautiful
have that
prose.
file saved someplace. I'm sure I have to look for that. I don't know.
The other item for the bottom right here, where it says because of the segregation laws and prevailing discriminatory attitudes during that time, it makes it the way it's referenced here. It sounds as if because of the laws, what was said on the plaque is said on the plaque regarding colored soldiers being separate, as opposed to
A more positive
it,
spin.
well, no, I don't want any spin, but it sounds like it was legislated that you had
It's more
to have
like
a
custom
separation
of that
in the
time period.
declaration. Okay, it sounds like the law required separation on the plaque, and I don't know that's the case. I know there were Jim Crow laws, I know there were black codes,
Well,
but I
you know,
don't
maybe
know.
we just get rid of that part of it and say because of the discriminatory attitudes of the day.
That might be reasonable.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, that's definitely.
Yeah, discriminatory attitudes.
The other piece is, if we're talking about World War I, the photographs are very interesting, great texture of the war, the two in the top. But if the war's trademark is trench warfare, we don't see trench warfare. And I think that would be one of the, an indicator of the suffering that it relates to. I think the photos are very wonderful. I mean, they're very engaging. But the other piece is, we talk about the notion of the doughboy. It's to be shown at the doughboy. There's no explanation as to where the term doughboy comes from, other than it's a
Do you
nickname.
know why? Because there are like 3 different versions of where it comes from.
And they might be worth mentioning.
Yeah.
That's the idea that, you can go, the nickname or a misnomer etymologically, or, a
But then it's
nickname
not
from.
clear exactly where the term came from. It's not,
No, I agree with you, and I'm saying we acknowledge that.
no, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be, if we're looking at, historical interpretation, truth be told,
Yeah.
it's unclear. One explanation is X, and go that direction, I would suggest. And that, in the community, everybody knows the doughboy. Where are you? You make a left at the doughboy.
Make a left
make
or
a
right at the doughboy.
But few don't get the sense as to where it comes from. And that's sort of an indicator of, when one view the wealth of the country and the expense of the country, like basically what we sacrificed. The flower of our youth. Beyond that,
Trenches.
Sure, yes.
Actually, that's what's going on in this picture here, where the soldiers are digging trenches.
over
in
there on the right.
preparation of battle.
great, if there were some text to support that, just to, like a statement under the photograph, soldiers here digging trenches, or something akin to that.
We can. We're so limited by text. Actually, there was a lot more text on this that we had to
Sure.
cut.
But I guess what I'm getting at, though, I mean, that's where the fighting happened, no man's land, the trench. I mean, that's the other place would be, the naval war, U-boats, and so on. But that's, it just feels like these are two places where it really misses the mark. I mean, as we have main ideas, America goes to war, well, it was a slaughterhouse because of trench warfare and, mechanized warfare, the machine gun, which is
Hey, we'll
mentioned
put
here.
that back in.
But the other part is, this is a very there's liveliness to this photo, which has
And
value.
also, it's set in the Argonne Forest, which, we were trying to bring the whole thing home and bring it down
Thematically,
to
sure.
a human scale with, residents here in town.
And again, that explanation of the doughboy, I mean, I feel those are,
This is the doughboy right here.
those are sort of touchstones to the war and touchstones to the community.
Yeah.
No, in this picture. Oh, I see.
Okay, any other questions? Any other comments?
I will mention, I think you guys didn't mention or not, that they've also worked very closely with Michael Hillman, who, as we know, is very active in the history and the historical facts of the town. So a lot of this has been reviewed.
Mike has seen them all, yeah.
Right, reviewed by him, and so factually, it's been Hillman approved. Just throwing that out there.
Good.
So, we're happy to get everybody's comments on this, and certainly we want it to be right. We do. We work very hard
No,
on it.
absolutely, I agree 100%.
Yeah. So anyway, on the last board?
Before you, I'm sorry, just one comment before you leave that last one. I don't know if it's possible to squeeze in something, but I don't know if it'd be possible to squeeze in actually a photograph of the tombstone of Francis Elder, basically in that little section there that's behind the church. I don't know if there'd be enough space for that or not, but
We would have to cut something out.
yeah,
So you'd have to decide. All the.
It gets
the-
too busy then. It's,
yeah.
I can understand why you would want to do that, but we would just have to determine.
Okay, yeah.
And we, right, can be found behind St. Joseph's Church in Emmitsburg? So that people can go visit.
Something
Right
like
where
that,
it
yeah, along those
What's up to
lines.
St.
Right on
Joseph's
Market.
first, though, honestly. I mean,
You know what, I think probably the better thing to do is work with the piece of text that's in there and just say that he was killed in Argonne and is buried here.
It is buried in Emmitsburg, Maryland, St.
Let's
Joseph's
go
Church.
that way with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I'm grateful for your bringing that up.
I just
saw
want-
the tombstone, I saw the stone, but I thought it was an empty grave.
No, he's actually buried here. In fact, I actually years ago I interviewed one of the elder's descendants who knew the uncle who said he actually had to identify the remains. The mother was too upset to open up the coffin and identify the remains. So he's definitely buried behind St. Joseph Cemetery.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but again, so many of these people were buried temporarily because the American forces moved so fast through France in October. They didn't want these bodies just laying outside, so they all kind of digged these really quick makeshift graves for like really thousands of Americans as they were moving forward. And then they came backwards, and they had a whole battalion that had to identify the remains of all these people and then bring them back to the United States. So,
Yeah.
anyways, just make sure it gets done.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Good, all right. I thought you liked that. You liked that, didn't you?
And what we were trying to do with this was to, this is one of, the town's architectural landmarks and historic buildings, and we were just trying to provide some historical overview and to communicate that it did have a role in the Civil War.
okay. Oh, the Gardner photo.
Like, just give her that.
Gardner's a controversial character because he was famous for dragging bodies and moving equipment around.
Yes.
So this is one of his more famous ones where this chap who's dead here might not have been killed here. He was killed a distance away from here. So that would definitely,
know.
that would definitely provoke people to chit chat about that, I think. So that might be
Controversy
a good
Gardner.
photo.
Gardner's.
Yeah, yeah.
But he's a tricky fellow, I'll say that. Where's the engagement? Is that in this one? No, it's not in this one.
His photographs are probably the best known photographs of the Civil War as far as, that era is concerned. And he obviously did manipulate the scene considerably, but they are some of the best known photographs of the Civil War era.
It's too bad we can't put some of the Daughters of Charity that were instrumental somehow.
Instrumental going up and handling the wounded and helping them out.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point.
Yeah.
Then people will know to go visit.
Yeah, that's a
There.
really good point.
Have you been in contact with the Daughters of Charity in Emmitsburg?
We've both done work
Okay.
with them, yeah. But we're dealing specifically with this site.
Okay, Emmett House.
There's
Yeah.
one side, I'm talking to Zach here, one side of the kiosk up there is all Daughters of Charity.
Okay. It's kind of a critical part of the story, so I just want to make sure it gets mentioned.
I mean, again, there's that local tie-in, yeah.
Too bad we can't superimpose one in the square.
If I may, Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
these signs were to get this started. We want to do more in town where it's
Okay.
appropriate.
Okay.
And where it's physically, we can accommomate them with ADA and
People
setbacks.
can actually walk back.
But there'll be
around.
more signs, and I think the sister there is something going on about another walk coming up that
Okay.
they want to have some signage out on South Seaton, but, you know, just to,
Okay, so you think that would
That's-
address it?
Yeah,
That's
these are
coming
just the
on.
beginning signs.
Okay.
okay.
I'm going to double back to Town Square, if that's okay, Mr. Sweeney, is that all right? Mr. Sweeney,
Yeah.
is that okay? I'm looking at the first paragraph here. This is the thing that leapt off at me. I'm looking at the second to last line there, talking about the encounter. And, you know, my mind jumps to the idiomatic expression, an encounter is a romantic encounter. I don't think that's the case there. Is it accurate to characterize the event as a skirmish? And would that be a better word choice?
I'm sorry, I can't find you.
Yeah,
Where-
okay, I'm sorry. I'm
Paragraph
unclear.
on the right,
Okay.
If this helps,
instead of encounter or
Yes, okay.
skirmish.
would that be a better way to?
But that's originally what I had.
Yeah.
And the concern was that, you know, again, you know, we're dealing with international visitors,
Sure.
and they might not know, I mean, it's really hard to come up with
Terminology.
the right word that would communicate what happened,
Mm-hmm.
but would be understandable to, you know, all audiences.
Or conflict.
Combat? Brief combat?
Conflict.
Conflict?
I think, like brief combat. That might be a better way to explain that.
Or engagement? I mean, engagement.
Well, again, you
Yep,
know,
double entendre, sure, sure.
it's difficult in terms of international language.
And you would.
I think
wouldn't you?
conflict is,
Internationally known word.
it's what?
Internationally known word.
Yeah, right, it is these days.
Skirmish. I mean, you know.
Again, you
we-
have to define skirmish. I think that's the problem, and it's tough with when you talk about military.
I have
interpreting.
a digital device in my pocket that can translate every word on the planet. I think if I were to put that word skirmish in there, I would have a better understanding. Do you follow what I mean? I mean, I think everyone has at their fingertips the capacity to interpret, even if it's an international visitor. Ms. Shaw says no, you disagree.
Some people don't have smartphones.
I'm willing to take that chance. I think skirmish is a better word than encounter. And it's better than combat, it's better than brief conflict. I mean, I rarely get married to words, but that would be one I would think is the better word.
Now, being a technology-driven teacher, I would love to see a little scan barcode so they could get more information on these also.
But where would they go? Where would you want them to go? That's the other issue too. These are gonna be in the ground 5, 10, 15 years.
And things will change.
Yeah, that's it. Now, you can have outdoor stickers applied to the post, but then again, you would have to decide that. You would also have to watch that. Somebody would
Yeah,
have to
someone
watch
have to,
that.
yeah, you're right, you're right.
So would you link that to the town website? Like have something there that they could? like,
Further
connect to?
information, please address your questions to
Sure.
town websites,
But no, I
something of that
mean,
nature.
you're talking about the scan, like where you have
Yeah,
the bullseye.
so it would go to the archives that we have on events, elaborating. You know, as a teacher, I put that and I have the thing read aloud, you know, 'cause
Sure.
I teach special ed.
Right, right,
Not
right.
everyone.
It's an interesting thought. Is that a service you guys provide? Do you do that interpretive?
Well, we can
Connectivity?
provide a QR code. We can give you cost for how much that would cost to
Sure.
to have those printed.
Is it-
But you would have to determine where
We'd
you
have
want
to
that
figure out
Connectivity,
the
sure,
link, yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is there a fee for that service of finding out the cost?
I'm sorry?
Is there a fee related for finding out the cost? Is that an add-on, like fee for your research on your end?
No.
No, great, okay.
But I would not be researching the sites that you would want to link to.
No,
You
no,
would have
just,
to give
just
those.
the actual capacity. That's kind of,
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty, are we done with the photographs for now? These are the first 3 that are going in.
Thank you for your input.
When do you need final, like, sort of?
yeah.
That's what I'm like. Where's the finality of this, Mayor?
I don't know, we're just trying to get it done and set. The object was to get wayside signs, get professional help, and
Oh, yeah.
I know they put a lot of work in this, and you have to respect the work they've done. It sounds like
Oh
we're
my God,
nitpicking this a little bit. The word encounter, I mean, that as a conflict or a skirmish, they could have shot 3 shots in the air and that was it, and the guys raised their hand and quit. We don't know what the battle was. It just kind of did something out there, but a skirmish to me, in my military background, which is limited, is you're setting, you're really going at it. It's an ambush or something like that. But all these things, it's how do you depict that thing that happened on Chambersburg Road where it just started out 3 guys accidentally ran into each other and it started the Gettysburg War? I mean,
Sure, I know what you're saying.
that's getting into stuff. 90 guys were caught.
What I'm asking is, like, when's this good at print? I guess that's what I want to make sure that.
Okay, well, but I want to be really respectful to these people and what they put in here and the work they've done. They've done put a lot of work.
They're
in,
wonderful.
Put a lot of
They've done
things
very
in.
nice.
Yeah.
Talked
And
to a
I've
lot
seen
of
your work
people
other
here in town,
places.
and it's just
You know what, we'll come back with these corrections and.
Okay.
We really are glad to have
I
them
think it's
all.
fantastic. I did. Believe me, I'm not. You know, I don't want to tear it apart. But I just want to make sure it's
We want it to be.
all
accurate.
kind of. Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? We found our new historical board of review right here. No, that's a good thing. It really is.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very supportive of this. Don't get me wrong. I just want to make sure that people living in town read it and go, nod
Absolutely.
their heads
I
and go,
mean,
yeah,
Now, it would be helpful to us, something that you've developed that you like
Okay.
for the Doughboy statue.
Okay.
If you could get that to us this week, we
Do you have
would
a
love that.
card?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we can give you, I can write down.
Or if we just
Tim,
send it to
you
Catherine.
get one. I'll get one, and
Sure.
we'll try to send some in.
Sure, absolutely.
So
Okay.
we do have,
No problem.
All
I
right.
understand.
I think he has it saved.
So they're going to come back with the add-ons.
We'll have certainly files for you all to review, or what would you like to do? I
So-
mean,
Yeah, we'll make this, once we get the text from you, then we will go ahead and make this next round of edits, so you can see another round
Okay.
of PDFs. Then, I mean, we're ready for production, when you are, so.
so for the grant, we have to be completely wrapped up and everything submitted to MHAA no later than June 30th of 2019.
Oh, okay.
But remembering we are coming into the winter,
Into the winter.
and
Got
so
it.
installation may be tricky.
Yeah, I got it.
Obviously, sooner the better.
do you have other concerns?
Nope,
About
I'm good.
accuracy? Then really, we should, assuming that we, if we respond to all the things that have been said this evening, then we're good. We're in good shape.
I think so.
Yeah, and
Hey,
With
general
your final
support.
review.
I don't feel as a nitpicking. There's a couple things I noticed, and even if you look back at old newspapers, it might be spelled one way here and one
You know
way there.
what?
Correct.
But the actual format that you got, like they're
love it.
they're bold, they're in your face. I like it. It really.
You'll
draws
catch
your
people's attention.
to it. So
Get them to understand the Doughboy
that's-
statue. Understand
that's
what's going
what I
on in
think.
town.
Now, will the actual pictures be bigger than this, or
Right, that'll scale 3 foot,
so they're going to be 3 foot?
yeah,
They're going to be
substantially
Pretty
larger.
big.
2 more times
Big,
bigger.
you'll like it. You'll like it, and we'll get it back
We
to you.
think, it'll be of great interest to
They're very
visitors that
large.
come, and the local residents will feel very proud about it. I mean, tying the
already
Doughboy
do.
to World War I in that way, that's pretty dramatic, I think.
Mr. Grove, do you have a card for Mr. O'Donnell also? I'm sorry.
You'd like a card too,
Did you get one?
please?
I'm sorry?
A card.
Mr. O'Donnell, I think he needs
yeah,
a card also.
yeah.
Sorry. I just want to make sure he gets one too.
Alrighty.
Thank you. That's appreciated.
Let's move
Thank you,
on to
folks.
the next
Thanks.
agenda item.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Yeah.
That's it, isn't it? That's the last
All right,
one.
what page are we on?
I want to go to say hello to them.
I'm confused now.
Good night.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a tree care ordinance to be considered.
Oh, here it is.
I need to change my mindset. I'm gonna have Ms. Shaw come up and sit here. She helped out quite a bit with this ordinance.
Trees.
So basically, what you have in front of you is a draft of what we call a tree care ordinance. It's necessary, one of the necessary items that the town has to adopt to become Tree City certified. Right now, this is your basic ordinance. We can add on to it in the future and get points towards our certification. This also lends towards our Sustainable Growth Award and our Sustainable Community Awards that we receive. The the whole reason for Tree City USA is essentially, and Ms. Shaw can talk about the program a little bit briefly, is basically you're saying you care about the health and the safety of your trees. You want to protect from dangerous trees, diseased trees, things of that nature. If you want to talk about Tree City USA just briefly, and then I'll go over the ordinance.
Yeah, yep, I can do that. Sorry, I was just looking for my notes. So Tree City USA has numerous benefits. The biggest being, from my research, public recognition of Emmitsburg, the reduced of costs on energy, stormwater management, erosion control, because it's basically a program to improve the health of our trees and to plant more trees in Emmitsburg. Community pride, tree education, there's a component of that, educating residents about how to take care of your trees, how to plant trees. Sustainable practice, we actually, once we are certified, we get 15 points for our Sustainable Maryland recertification. So that's a great benefit. And then the property values, there's been research that shows trees can improve property value. And so essentially with this the Tree City USA certification is a 4-part process. One of them we've already done, which is the Arbor Day observance and proclamation, which, as you may recall, the board passed last year, and we had a grand celebration. So thank you for participating. The other 3 things we need to do is create a tree board, which with discussions with DNR Becky Wilson, who, as you may recall, was the person who did the training at the Arbor Day celebration. It doesn't have to be formalized. So the plan is to have the green team kind of take over those duties, and it would just be planning the Arbor Day celebration, things like that. And then we have to pass a tree care ordinance, which is what's before you tonight. And that's just providing guidance on how to take care of trees in town, how to kind of prevent, make sure there's public safety regarding trees. So making sure there's no dead trees hanging over streets that could fall on someone, things like that, and making sure our park trees are healthy. And then the 4th thing is to have a budget of at least $2 per capita towards tree health. And so that would be things like planting trees. So the grant that we got to plant the trees last year would count for that. The money that we spent on our parks department, pruning trees, removing trees, mulching trees, all that counts. And so from my understanding, we meet that requirement. So this is really the last thing we have to do to get certified this year.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So for the tree board, we talked with the mayor, and she talked with Becky Wilson. For now, we're going to have the green team oversee it. In the future, we'd like to add a designated tree board. We'll get additional points as far as our certification is concerned. Just to meet the criteria for Tree City USA, we've developed with the help of Becky Wilson with DNR, Mike Kay with the Forest Service, and John Clapp, we've developed a basic tree care ordinance. And what I'll do is I'll go through and highlight some of the areas, and then if you have any questions, myself or Ms. Shaw can try to answer them for you. Like I said, John Clapp reviewed the entire ordinance. He added some language as far as the enforcement is concerned, and also with the ability of the town to enter private property, such as what we do with our water and sewer infrastructure. So basically, we've placed the under John's guidance, we placed the tree care ordinance under health and safety, and it's going to be in Chapter 8, Section 20, the forest and tree conservation. Your first section is definitions, and the definitions for a large tree, a medium tree, a park tree, which means all trees, shrubs, bushes, and all other woody vegetation in public areas having individual names in all areas owned by the town or to which the public has access as a park. Then you have small trees, and then your street trees means all trees, shrubs, bushes, and all other woody vegetation on land lying between property lines on either side of all streets, avenues, or ways within the town. Then the definition for a tree. Section 8, Chapter 8, 030, talks about your street trees. The purpose of this section is to establish criteria applicable to planting, care, maintenance, and removal of street trees in the town of Emmitsburg. And the section after that is what John added, said, these are in addition to the requirements for roadside trees as set forth in the natural resources article. So not only are we saying you have to abide by the town code, you have to also abide by what DNR has set forth as well in those sections that listed. And then no street tree may be planted without first obtaining the permit required by the Maryland roadside tree law unless otherwise exempt by that law, which would be the town. Basically, it says you as a private citizen can't just go plant a tree, what would be constituted as a street tree. They don't own the land where that tree would go in the first place.
So is there a distance from the road that indicates?
Well, yeah,
that-
the distance is, it's on land line between property lines on either side of all streets, avenues, or ways. So anything that lands like between the sidewalk and the street would be
Oh, I
considered
see.
a street tree.
Okay.
And then letter B is basically the following list constitutes the official street tree species for Emmitsburg. No species other than those included in this list may be planted as street trees without the written permission of the town manager and/or his or her designee. Additional species will be considered on a case-by-case basis. This list was approved, recommended by the Forest Service, Mike Kay, and Becky Wilson with DNR, who is actually the first tier of approval for Tree City USA. So you see the small trees, the medium trees, and the large trees that are approved to be street trees. And then we're just talking about street trees right now, the trees that can be
Right.
planted along our roadways.
Which ones did we plant? Which tree did we plant out here now?
There was 4 different kinds out there, two
Good
different
ones?
cherry trees, and I don't remember the other 2.
Hope they're on the list.
They're on the list.
They're on the list.
They are. They are. That was something Ms. Shaw and I talked about, to make sure that we were in compliance on both sides.
So the reason these are chosen for street trees is by their roots and how they behave?
Right, I'm sure it's because of their roots, their hardiness, their dropping of vegetation, their leaves falling, the height
The
that they
black
get.
walnut's not on there because people would fall all over the
Right,
place.
exactly. So these trees were chosen for very specific reasons. Following that, no person other than a duly authorized representative of the town may plant, remove, trim, prune, maintain, or remove any street tree or other plants or shrubs located in any public right-of-way. The town may undertake such actions as necessary to ensure public safety or to preserve or enhance the symmetry and the beauty of the street trees, shrubs, or plants, which shall be performed in accordance with the Maryland roadside tree law. So we have to follow town code, DNR law, and then the Maryland roadside tree law also. Section 40 is the general tree care, maintenance, pruning, and removal. And this talks about every owner of any tree overhanging any street or right-of-way within the town shall prune the branches so that such branches shall not obstruct the light from any street lamp or obstruct the view of any street intersection, and so that there shall be a clear space of 8 feet above the surface of the street or sidewalk. Said owner shall remove all dead, deceased, or dangerous trees or broken or decayed limbs which constitute a menace to the safety of the public. Every owner of any tree shall maintain such trees so that it does not create a hazard or cause injury to sewer lines, electric power, and other utility lines, gas lines, water lines, or other public improvements. Section B, any owner of any tree which is in violation of subsection A may be notified by the town of such violation and instructed to correct the violation within a period of time as determined by the town manager or their designee for a time period not less than 20 days. In the event that the owner fails to correct the violation within the 20-day period, the town may undertake to trim, prune, or remove only so much of the tree or part thereof that is necessary to remove the violation. In that event, the owner shall be liable to the town for the cost and expense of doing so. So if your trees are hanging over in any violation subsection A, this gives the authority to the town to only trim the tree as so much to correct the violation. So if it's blocking an intersection, a street light, or if it's hanging too far down, it gives the town the authority to, if you're not willing to do it within the set amount of time, it gives the town the authority to do it, and then we would invoice the owner. Did you have a question?
Well, I know that Potomac Edison trimmed my tree.
Right.
It wasn't, and then what about like the neighborhoods where there's not a sidewalk and there's a tree? I mean, are those grandfathered in? I mean,
No, there
how are
wouldn't.
we handling
This would not be there's no grandfathering for that. Grandfathering only applies to zoning, anything in the zoning.
I know, but if the tree's been there for 100 years.
Well,
and
you still have to rectify it if it's a hazard. If it's hanging over on the street, if it's blocking street lights, and only so much that you correct that violation. So if their tree, I understand a tree is 100 years old, but if the tree's hanging over where people can't walk down the side, and I'm not sure exactly where, just for example, they can't walk
Just
down the
supposing.
sidewalk, or they're blocking an intersection so that you have to creep all the way out in the intersection to make a turn, it should be rectified for the safety of, the people in the area. A lot of these trees, and this is what part of what
Do we have a lot
you're.
of that problem here? Do we have a lot of that
We
problem?
have, right now, we're dealing with 2 trees. I think we have 2 right now that are of concern. We don't have a big problem with it. And these are things that your tree board, once we establish a full-blown tree board, that, they may make these determinations. They would go out and find out and see the trees if they're necessary. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm just looking at all facets. So go
Right.
ahead.
Section 50, public lands. No person, firm, or entity shall plant, trim, prune, maintain, or remove any tree, shrub, or other plant located on a street or road right of way. And all stumps of street and park trees shall be removed below the surface of the ground so that the top of the stump shall not project above the surface, which creates a tripping hazard. Excuse me. 60, no property owner may maintain on private property any tree or part thereof which, and it highlights the 3 section. 1, interferes with the proper spread of light along the street from a street light, or interferes with the visibility of the street to the public traveling on the public streets, or any traffic control device or sign, which harbors insects or disease which, as determined by a certified tree arborist, constitutes a potential threat to other trees within the town, or is in such a weak or unsafe condition that it poses an immediate threat to the public health and safety. In the event that a violation of subsection A is determined to exist, the town shall have the right to enter onto the property to correct the violation. Prior to entering, the town has to notify the property owner in writing, giving the violation in detail, date, nature, and location. The notice shall instruct the owner to correct the violation at their expense within 60 days after the date of service, and of the right to request a hearing before the Board of Commissioners. Upon receiving notice of the violation, the owner may request a hearing before the board within 15 days of receiving the notice. If a request for hearing is made, the Board of Commissioners shall schedule a hearing on the violation to be held within 30 days of the receipt of the request. At that hearing, the owner will be given an opportunity to hear the facts of the alleged violation and to present testimony and witnesses in support of the owner's position. In the event that the Board of Commissioners finds that the violation exists, then the owner shall correct the violation within 20 days of the board's decision. And this was written by John Clapp. These are the procedures that he recommended we follow whenever it would be necessary to go onto private property. If the owner fails to request a hearing and fails to correct the violation within 60 days, or after a hearing, the Board of Commissioners found that a violation exists and the owner fails to correct the violation within time period set, the board may correct the violation at the owner's expense. And it dictates how the town should do the work. We do have this in other sections of our code. The sidewalk, we give the owner the opportunity to fix their sidewalk. If they don't fix their sidewalk, the town has the right to fix it and then bill them. So it's similar to other sections that we already have in our code. Section 70, no liability. Nothing contained in this chapter shall impose any liability upon the town of Emmitsburg. Section 80, interference with the town is prohibited. It shall be unlawful for any person to prevent, delay, or interfere with the town, its employees, or officials when planting, cultivating, mulching, pruning, etc. with the trees. Section 90, enforcement. Any person violating any provision of this ordinance shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be subject to a fine of $50 for each offense, unless otherwise governed by state law, in which case the maximum penalty shall apply. That's the ordinance in a nutshell.
So a question for clarification, just so it's,
Commissioner O'Donnell.
understand, is it okay to ask? Okay, thank you, sir. In Tacoma Park, there's an ordinance where an individual has to apply for, more or less it seems, the right to have a tree removed from their own property. And they talk about like being very protective of older trees, and I don't know if it still exists now. I remember at one point in time it did exist. Absolute clarity, this is nothing like that related to private property. It's just maintenance and public hazard, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There are, and we had looked at some stricter ordinances, and we opted to start with something of this level. No, it's not meant to tell you what tree you cannot and can or cannot plant on your property, as long as you maintain it, and as long as it doesn't become diseased or a health or safety hazard.
Terrific, okay.
Yes.
Because I just worry that someone might come in and say, you know, you're restricting my property rights, and I
No.
just want to be absolutely crystal clear.
Right.
Terrific. Thank
Correct.
you.
Yes.
Mr. Ritz. Do you have anything?
Sorry.
I did.
I was trying to come down the line.
You want to come down the line? Okay. Just two things. I'm not a tree expert, not an arborist, although Mr. Shaw and I think I'm still very happy with how we planted our trees. But the small tree, the second one listed crabapple. I know this list was given by, like Mr. K and whoever. I know there's an issue with crabapples around here. There's a certain blight that they get. There's like a fungus that grows on the leaves, and you have to treat them. I don't know if you're aware of that. They look really nice when they're bloom in the spring, but
Right.
do dogwoods
I
get
mean,
that too?
basically, this is a list that we can go by. It doesn't mean that we have, and these are for your street trees. So if there's a tree that, the town staff agrees or the board agrees, that maybe we don't want to plant, but I'm not real familiar with crab trees.
All these
Crabapple
trees will
trees.
have a blight. I'm sorry.
I'm becoming
Like a
crabby.
funky fungus on it, and that the leaves fall
But
off.
all of them are targeted by some
Okay.
component in nature, so.
Okay. The only other thing I had, just for clarification, and maybe I'm failing to see it, on page 25, right below the list of all the trees, that paragraph, and then the following page, section A, that paragraph, what's the difference between those two sections?
Because this one here, the section on page 25 pertains to your street trees. So this paragraph here is part of your letter B.
Okay,
So we inserted the chart and continued the paragraph
okay,
for B. This number 40, letter A, this is for private property owners. So it says every owner of any tree overhanging any street. So that's for your private property owner or public
Okay, so-
property owner.
all right. Just making sure
Right, this one, the one you were reading, 25, that's strictly street trees.
yeah, I see. I apologize. I guess it wasn't jumping out
It
at me.
does look a little
Because I know
funny.
private property's down in 50,
Yes.
so it's just jumping. Yeah. But I get it now.
Okay.
Okay.
Finished? Got another one?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay. Commissioner Buckman.
I'm remembering the barn on Lincoln that was falling down, and those people didn't have the money. And I know that a lot of our residents are on just such limited income, I'm hoping that the town would getting bombarded with one fine and then the next fine and the next fine could kill somebody. I don't know if you would work with that person to do that. I mean, I want to be gentle, not traumatize
Well, I
people.
mean, I think as with the barn, I think the community reached out to that person. I mean, we have to enforce the code across the board with
I
everybody,
understand
and
that. It's the spirit of the law and the
I-
trust of the people.
I understand, and, you know, the town, you know, if we end up you know, we try to give them as much time as we can to, that's allowable to make the repairs or,
Right.
or rectify the situation. I think the burden would be unfortunately on them to reach out to the community for assistance. You know,
So you guys would suggest that maybe they could reach out to the community for assistance?
if they would say to us that they don't have the money to pay for it, we could suggest that they reach out, but they have to do it on their own. It's not something the town could reach out for. You know, because ultimately, what's going to come back if they can't do it, the town's going to have to pay for it to do it, which means everybody else is essentially paying for it. And
Mr. Sweeney, can I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Related to Commissioner Buckman's request, there was a mention of $2 per capita budgeted annually. That's what we're trying to strive for. Would there be a means by which we could have some qualifier for someone to apply for a grant of sorts with that fund that's set aside so they could qualify? Or is there a designated use here?
my understanding is that budget's designated for the town to plant trees within the town public land and the maintenance of the trees and the mulch and the pruning and the removal of any, you know, street trees that, you know, would need to be pruned or, yeah, I already said that. Is that correct?
Could we make available a $500 grant or something akin to that that could be applied for based on need, or, I don't know. I mean, if you'd want to do something like that.
I mean, we only have 2 in town right now that we're dealing with. I think on a case-by-case basis is the only way that we could really, you know, look into it. And I think offering them up, if they came back and truly said they didn't have the money to do it, you know, telling them to reach out to the community, you know. There are community organizations in town that have helped people with other facets, such as their water and their sewer bills or other problems that
Just-
come along.
Going back to that one barn incident, they were hiding. They were so afraid. You know, they felt intimidated. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have the money and they were disabled. And so maybe if, I don't know, a way to put it in a letter that says, you know, if you are experiencing difficulty, you know, reach out to the Seton Center, and then the Seton Center would guide them to, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I think
That was, it stuck in my head so much that those people were panicking, and they don't need to.
Are you suggesting, like, if, let's say,
Even if
there's a
they-
large branch hanging out in the street, therefore they're in violation, and they don't have the means to remove that branch, therefore they'll get fined?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody would step up and, you know, hey, I got a chainsaw, I can help you
Right,
out.
but then in the interim, they're getting fined for not responding and
True.
fines for not
Well,
responding.
that's there, you know, if you respond, I don't want to bring up old wounds, but had Bollinger responded to the 8 letters that we sent them, we may not have gotten to this position. So don't ignore the enforcement letters that you receive.
Human nature. though.
And then we don't get to that point. Reach out. When you get an enforcement letter, reach out to the town and say, you know, we're not horrible people. We do
Right.
work with
Can
people.
that be written in these letters? Just like, please call us if there's a concern or a problem.
We already do.
It's on there?
Yes. If you have any questions, concerns, please call us.
Yeah.
I think human nature, most people don't get to that
They
point, though.
avoid it.
And I
or
understand
they
that.
might not even read that sentence. They just see, oh, yeah, I'm in violation, I'm fined. You know, it's like they
panic.
almost
That'll-
don't get that far, even though it's there, you know?
You can lead, like in that old adage, you can lead lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. We can only do so much and offer up services. Eventually, they have to reach out.
Well, I
We
was
don't know if
even-
you're in need or you're just ignoring us.
And I was even
Many people
thinking
ignore us.
that if you went in there and you trimmed that branch that he's talking about that was hanging over, and then they were offered monthly payments to get it up to what they owed. Just a little bit of just consideration.
Well, they have to make that effort. We can tell them to contact us, and, if you have problems, if you have concerns, please reach out to us. We don't know, like I said, we don't know if you're just ignoring us because you don't care, because that does happen, or you're ignoring us because you don't financially can't do it, or you're handicapped or disabled. Reach out to us. I mean, people don't hesitate to reach out to us when they can't pay the water and sewer bill, and we work with them.
Yeah, it's usually a pride thing.
So,
People don't.
And I don't.
no, I understand.
I don't see this being in violation as much as some of, if your grass is too high or you're just not
No.
paying your water bill.
Yeah, it is
So
different.
I have hopes for this. It won't
Yeah, get to
it
that.
won't be as enforced as much, but it's
Right.
there if we need it.
Right. Like I said, we only have 2 right now. And that's the first 2 that I know of in the last at least 2 years.
Do you have anything else you want to bring up? Glenn, do you have anything else you want to bring up? I don't have anything else to bring up. Do we want to make a motion on this?
Do we have to make a
Tree
motion per
orders.
section? Or just the whole ordinance?
Is the whole ordinance correct?
Which section's not correct? What's not correct?
Do you need a motion for the whole ordinance? Kathy,
I'm sorry.
do you need a motion for the whole ordinance?
Yes, I do. Just for the ordinance 18-16.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to accept the ordinance number 18-16.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Buckman, second by Commissioner Blanchard. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, ordinance,
Yeah.
This is all you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question about the green team? If someone's interested in joining, do they just reach out to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please. Does Jack want to?
And it doesn't go, that's not a board thing, it's just whoever's interested, you
Right, absolutely.
welcome to the team.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
already. Agenda item 3, separated storm sewer systems, MS4 update by staff.
Okay, so we saved the most interesting presentation for last. This is definitely the most interesting topic for me tonight. So the town of Emmitsburg was covered under the United States Environmental Protection Agency's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Phase 2 General Discharge Permit number 13 IM 5500 until recently on October 31st of this year. In August of this year, I submitted the town's notice of intent to comply with the new General Discharge Permit number 13 SF 5501, which covers the time period from November 1st, 2018 until October 30th, 2023. So what is MS4? MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. A MS4 is a conveyance or system of conveyances that are, 1, owned by a state, city, town, village, or other public entity that discharges waters within the state. 2, designed or used to collect or convey stormwater, which includes storm drains, pipes, ditches, etc. And 3, they are not part of a publicly owned treatment facility or sewage treatment plan. So a raindrop, as you can see on the picture here, may land on a tree and evaporate. It may land on a farm field and soak into the soil, or it may land on a rooftop, driveway, or road and travel down the street into a storm drain or MS4 or stream. Precipitation in an urban or suburban area that does not evaporate or soak into the ground, but instead runs across the land and into the nearest waterway is considered stormwater runoff. Increased development across the watershed has made stormwater runoff the fastest growing source of pollution to the Chesapeake Bay. So how does stormwater runoff affect the Chesapeake Bay? As stormwater flows across the streets, sidewalks, lawns, and golf courses, it can pick up harmful pollutants and push them into storm drains, rivers, and streams. These pollutants can include lawn and garden fertilizers, pet waste, sand and sediment, chemical contaminants, and litter. Stormwater runoff can cause a number of environmental problems, such as fast-moving stormwater runoff can erode stream banks, damage hundreds of miles of aquatic habitat. Stormwater runoff can push excess nutrients from fertilizers, pet waste, and other sources into rivers and streams. Nutrients can fuel the growth of algae blooms that create low oxygen dead zones that suffocate marine life. Stormwater runoff can push excess sediment into rivers and streams. Sediment can block sunlight from reaching underwater grasses and suffocate shellfish. Stormwater runoff can push pesticides, leaking fuel or motor oil, and other chemical contaminants into rivers and streams. Chemical contaminants can harm the health of humans and wildlife. Stormwater runoff can also lead to flooding in urban and suburban areas. And forests, wetlands, and other vegetated areas can trap water and pollutants, slowing the flow of stormwater runoff. But when urban and suburban development increases, builders often remove these natural buffers to make room for the impervious surface that encourage stormwater to flow freely into the local waterways. Since the town is considered a urbanized area by the latest census, our compliance with the MS4 permit is mandatory. In order to remain compliant with the permit, we are required to continue to make progress on the following 6 minimum control measures. 1 is public education and outreach. 2, public involvement and participation. 3, illicit discharge detection and elimination. 4, construction site stormwater runoff control. 5, post-construction stormwater management. And 6, water or pollution prevention and good housekeeping. We also must create and implement a Chesapeake Bay restoration plan, which is one of the most important steps of the whole process. So public education and outreach. The purpose of the public education and outreach plan is to implement and maintain a public education and outreach program and distribute educational materials to the community and employees to help reduce the discharge of pollutants caused by stormwater runoff. Town staff has recently added a stormwater management page to our website. Material on how to report illicit discharge and contact information is provided. Also available on that page are links to the stormwater annual progress reports and other educational environmental information. Let's see. The town is very active in distributing stormwater education materials through newsletters, websites, and other appropriate methods. We currently distribute information on the following topics: composting, maintaining your lawn while protecting water quality, natural household cleaners, harvesting rainwater, using rain barrels, gardening with native plants, design and construction of rain gardens. The town has received an extremely positive review from the Maryland Department of the Environment for our public education and outreach program. So public involvement and participation. The purpose of the public involvement and participation program is to create and foster opportunities for public participation in the MS4 management program for controlling stormwater discharges. In the 2018 reporting period, the town identified the following opportunities for public participation in the MS4 program for controlling stormwater discharges. First was the Willow Rill Stream reforestation. There's some pictures of showing that. Emmitsburg Volunteer Community Cleanup Days, which is still going on every month. Thank you for Commissioner Buckman for heading that up. That's really good.
That was actually Wayne.
That's Wayne. Okay. Thank you, Wayne.
I just support him.
You just support. Okay. Cigarette litter prevention program, which was headed by Maddie Shaw. And an affordable compost bin purchasing program, which is also headed by Ms. Shaw. We are only required to hold a public participation event once a year, so we went above and beyond these requirements. Again, we've received extremely positive reviews for this, and we thank everybody for this.
Can I have a question?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Slaughter is going to be doing maybe a planting of the thing. Is that considered under this too?
It depends on where the plants are going to go. If it's by the stream bank, it,
Gonna be, yeah, over there, where all the water lays and runoff is and everything over there in the.
yeah, we can definitely put that in the permit for next reporting period. And I think that would definitely count.
I think he's coming to one of the next meetings coming up.
He submitted a proposal a while back and said scratch it, and he was gonna bring another one. I
Yeah,
haven't
he's
heard
still
anything
working, yeah, he's
since.
still working on it. He's
So-
almost finished it, they told me.
Okay, great. Thank you. So illicit discharge detection and elimination. So the purpose of this plan is to identify and eliminate illicit storm drain system discharges. A permittee will satisfy this requirement by field screening storm drain system outfalls, inspecting the storm drain system to identify any source of illicit discharge, eliminating any illegal connection or illicit discharge into the storm system, and enforcing penalties where appropriate. So step one, the first step in order to satisfy this requirement was to create a map of the jurisdiction's storm drain infrastructure, which identifies all pipes, outfalls, inlets, stormwater management BMPs, which are basically ponds, illicit discharge screening locations, and surface waters. The town contracted with Advanced Land and Water, Inc. of Eldersburg, Maryland, to conduct this work, which cost the town $12,350. This is a one-time fee, and the work was completed in October of this year. Step two, the town must develop and implement standard operating procedures in 2019. The SOPs must specify the following. We must create an inspection checklist describing how outfalls are screened for dry weather flows. We must screen 20% of the total outfalls per year, which is up to 100. Procedures for identifying the source and eliminating spills, illegal dumping, and other suspected illicit discharge. Identifying priority areas for illicit discharge screening based on pollution potential. Enforcement and penalty procedures. Procedures to inform employees, businesses, and the general public of the issues relating to illegal discharge and improper waste disposal. Coordination with adjacent interconnected MS4 operators. And town staff is currently gathering quotes in order for an outside firm to develop the SOPs and perform the yearly required screenings of the town's stormwater outfalls. We expect the cost of developing the SOPs to be a one-time fee of approximately $7,500. We expect the cost of screening 20% of the outfalls per year, up to 100 outfalls, to be an annual fee of $5,500. And as you can tell, this is just a map of every single MS4 that we have in the town. So, construction site stormwater runoff control. The purpose of this plan is to comply with the state of Maryland erosion and sediment control regulations under COMAR 2617-01. The statute and COMAR specify the requirements for any construction activity that distributes 5,000 square feet or 100 cubic yards or more of earth movement. The town of Emmitsburg relies on Frederick County for the implementation of the erosion and sediment control program per town ordinance 77-1 and Frederick County resolution 85-20. This section also requires staff to be adequately trained on proper procedures and actions to address potential discharge of pollutants into the storm drain system as a result of any construction activity. The following employees hold the State of Maryland Erosion and Sediment Control Certification: Amy Nail, Kathy Willits, Christopher Wantz, David Wantz, Jim Click, and myself. Post-construction stormwater management. The purpose of this plan is to maintain an acceptable stormwater management program in accordance with, again, COMAR. The statute and COMAR require that stormwater management shall be addressed for new development and redevelopment for any proposed project that disturbs 5,000 square feet or more. I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just wondering if you need another slide.
Oh, nope.
Okay.
The town of Emmitsburg, again, relies on Frederick County for the implementation of the post-construction stormwater program. Pollution prevention and good housekeeping. The purpose of this plan is to develop and implement an operation and maintenance program that includes a training component to prevent and reduce pollutant runoff from municipal operations. Town staff must take an annual training on the importance of water quality protection through pollution prevention and good housekeeping measures. Topics shall include spill prevention and response, controls for reducing and limiting the discharge of pollutants during facility operations, proper disposal of waste, and routine inspections to detect and correct potential stormwater discharges at facilities owned and operated by the town. The town held a mandatory training session for all employees on September 11th of this year. The training topics included introduction to stormwater management, how to spot and report stormwater pollution, salt storage and application practices, material stockpile practices, chemical handling practices, general chemical management, general waste management, fueling operations, spill prevention and cleanup, and vehicle maintenance and general management practices. We expect the yearly cost of the training to be approximately $500 to $1,000. Another requirement under the section was to develop, implement, and maintain a pollution prevention plan at publicly owned and operated facilities. This must include description of site activities, site map identifying all buildings, stormwater conveyances, including ditches, pipes, swales, directions of stormwater flow, water bodies, receiving discharges, and locations of all existing structural control measures or BMPs, a list of potential pollutants and their sources, written good housekeeping procedures for routine site inspections to detect and correct stormwater discharges, releases, and spills, and we must document any kind of spills that happens at any of our buildings. I created the pollution prevention plan, and I distribute it to all town employees as required per our permit. Okay, so one of the most important things I believe is the Chesapeake Bay restoration plan. So step one, next year we must develop a baseline impervious assessment. The assessment will calculate the total impervious acres within the town's boundaries. This will not include any state or county-owned property. So Main Street and Seton Avenue, we will not have to count towards our impervious, so that will save us a lot of money doing that. The town is currently gathering written quotes from engineering firms in order to complete this requirement. Like I said, it has to be done in 2019. We expect the cost of developing the assessment to be a one-time fee of approximately $19,000. This quote also includes a simple restoration work plan, which I will talk about right now. So step two, our permit requires that we treat and clean 20% of the total impervious acreage stormwater within the town boundaries. We will know the total number of acres of impervious surface the town has in 2019 once we complete our assessment. The simple restoration work plan will outline 5 or more potential projects that the town can complete before 2023 in order to treat the 20%. So projects can include stream bank restoration, stormwater basin retrofitting, basically from a dry, which is on your left, to a bioretention swale, rain garden construction. This is the rain garden from the Dollar General. This is exactly what we want it to look like, and that's serving its purpose. It's cleaning the stormwater off of the driveway off of Dollar General. And town staff will present this plan, the simple restoration plan, to the Board of Commissioners in 2019 in order to properly budget and plan for the upcoming projects. The town must complete the project or projects before 2023 or face penalties of up to $10,000 per violation per day, up to $100,000. So here's a summary of, I'm sorry, Commissioner Buckman, do you have a question?
I was just wondering, is there grants to help fund all of this?
Yes, there is. Let's see.
I have a question too.
Sure.
With the restoration of the riprap up at the dam, would that be considered part of this?
I believe it will to a little point.
Because
That's just
all
a
being riprap, the stream and the water coming out
right.
to help clean it.
We're gonna present that to Advanced Land and Sea or Advanced Land and Water, and then we'll let them credit that to our, because we did spend a good amount on that.
I mean, we're doing half of it this year, yeah.
We've done 2 phases. Phase 2 is complete. We have one more phase, and then it'll be all completed.
And I believe any projects that have been done since 2006 will count towards our requirements. So it will
The
reduce.
Then the school has the Mother Seton School had some bio ponds put in, which is,
Yes, that, and also the Seton Center has a really nice bioretention basin behind their building, and it's all impervious surface. That will all count.
it all drains through the parking lot.
Yeah, it's a great system. So that will all count and help us, the town, save money. So big thank you to them for doing that. So, a summary of the costs for our permit period. So, 2019 Standard Operating Procedures Manual, one-time fee of $7,500. 2019 Baseline Impervious Assessment and Simple Restoration Plan, one-time fee of $19,000. For the yearly fees, outfall inspections, $5,500 per year. Staff training, $500 to $1,000 per year. This year, I was able to pull some YouTube videos, but there's only so many videos we can pull that are any good to learn and everything. So we might have to purchase some videos in the future to show staff. Might have to hold a little longer sessions. And so from 2019-23, 20% of the impervious treatment projects, this will be determined in 2019. I don't want to speculate because we don't know how much impervious surface we have. So depending on that and all of our credits that we can get, I really can't give you a figure of what it's going to be. But next year, we will definitely give you the exact figure of what it's going to cost us. But I do recommend that we start budgeting for this large project or projects within the next budget, so we don't have to come up with a lump sum all at one time. And that's everything. Is there any questions?
You said there was grants to help fund this?
There are some grants through the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I know the state of Maryland offers a lot of grants, so I will definitely seek grant funding for this, but I'm sure there will be some kind of match.
So we would need to budget at least 40 to 50,000.
Yeah.
Because of the 5,000 per year.
That's correct.
One time per year, about 50. We need to start that at the next budget.
Yes.
Any questions for staff?
No, sir.
No, thank you.
You're welcome.